The Blaziken Delcatty synergy allows you to discard a fire energy with energy draw some cards off of it, and then use Firestarter to take that same fire energy and accelerate it onto one of your benched Pokemon. But how could we make the combo more powerful? What if we layered in another thing? Like the ability to then move those fire energy off of your benched Pokemon onto any Pokemon you want, including the one that's in your active position. Yeah, that's good. Let's get Team Aqua's Manectric in there. Oh yeah, and then two of the biggest powerhouses we can find that utilize fire energy. Oh, they also discard fire energy, so we can just recycle those back onto themselves or other Pokemon. Cool, and while we're at it, let's just get some type coverage in here so we can really stick it to those water types. I know that sounds like a lot going on, but this deck pulls it off. It's pretty good. It's super fun. Let's get into the deck list. In the last Blaziken video I mentioned a more technical version of this deck that did exist, and here it is. This has even more Pokemon doing even more things to cover more situations. So let's start at the top of the list here. We got Torchic from Ruby and Sapphire. That's going to be evolving into Combusken. We are running a 4-2-2-2 line. So on top of the Combusken, I have two Firestarter Blazikens that are going to be pretty important for accelerating those fire energy, much like the other Blaziken deck we talked about, but this time we are pairing it with the powerhouse that is Blaziken EX. So a couple copies in here too. Blaziken can be a pretty powerful card, but we're really going to want to power up Volcanic Ash. That way your opponent's Pokemon cannot hide on the bench. They can't set up a big attacker, not when Blaziken EX is around, because you're going to be able to accelerate energy onto it, get off a Volcanic Ash attack, which discards 2 fire energy and then snipes for 100. Very few Pokemon are going to be safe on the bench from just taking a straight 100 to the face. Those discarded fire energy are going to be easy to get back because of the Firestarter Blaziken, so ideally you want at least one of these Blaziken in play, and then one of these Blaziken EX in the active position as your big attacker. Pairing with that Firestarter ability, we also have 2 Skitty and 2 Delcatty to run the same type of combo where you are discarding a fire energy to utilize Delcatty's energy draw to draw some cards, and then use Firestarter to get that fire energy from the discard back onto a benched Pokemon. One of the limitations of the OG vanilla Delcatty Blaziken combo is that those fire energy have to go to a benched Pokemon, and a lot of times you have to move Pokemon around in order to get a solid attacker that's full of energy into the active position. This build likes to alleviate that by including 2 copies of Team Aqua's Electrike and 2 copies of Team Aqua's Manectric because of its Power Shift Pokepower, which allows you to move as many energy per turn as you want from Team Aqua's Manectric onto another Pokemon. So as long as the energy originates from Team Aqua's Manectric, you can move it to another Pokemon as often as you like. So the idea is to have at least one Manectric on the bench. That way you're using Firestarter to load it down with fire energy, and then using Power Shift to move those fire energy right back into the Pokemon that's already in the active position. So in the ideal setup, you have a Blaziken EX in the active position, you have a Firestarter Blaziken on the bench, along with Team Aqua's Manectric. So you're able to Firestarter a fire energy from your discard onto Team Aqua's Manectric, and then use Power Shift to put it right back onto that active Blaziken EX. Now if you've got 2 Firestarter Blaziken on your bench, and a Blaziken EX in the active position, you are in a position to just steamroll this game, because every 2 fire energy you're discarding off of Blaziken EX, you can just Firestarter onto Manectric and get straight back onto that Blaziken. It's not necessary though, because you still have your energy per turn. So you can accelerate one of those discarded energy right back onto Blaziken EX, play your energy per turn, and you're still consistently sniping for 100 damage every single turn as soon as you get it set up. And you're going to be able to get it set up faster than your opponent because of Firestarter. And that's really the core of the deck. We also have 1 Oddish and 1 Bellossom that's going to be utilizing Rare Candy just in case you are up against one of those big water type decks that's weak to grass, or even something like Groudon that's also weak to grass. You can play an Oddish Rare Candy up into Bellossom, and you have a grass type attacker that's going to be able to hit for weakness. Bellossom's Solar Beam attack is going to be extremely helpful against decks like Gorbis. You're going to be able to get an Oko on a Gorbis just by attaching a multi-energy or a grass energy, sending the Blossom into play, powering it up with the Firestarter Manectric combo, and then just hitting for 100 damage. To go even further down the alternative attacker hole, we also have a Rayquaza EX in here. Rayquaza EX is just an all-around good attacking Pokemon. For some reason, my browser's not wanting to cooperate and actually show the Rayquaza EX. But that's okay, I'll throw it up on the screen here for you. It's just another good attacker to have in your arsenal for dealing a lot of damage at the same time. It also has some convenient resistances and a weakness that you're not going to run into very often. On top of this big old Pokemon list, we also have 4 copies of Dunsparce. Dunsparce is just one of the best utility cards in this format, if not the best Pokemon to have in your deck. Strike and Run's going to let you go grab your entire setup. So if you start the game with a Dunsparce, you can Strike and Run on your first attacking turn, go grab a couple of Torchics, a Skitty, or if you've already got a Torchic hand, you can go grab Skitty, Team Aqua's Electrike, even a Rayquaza, if you just want to slap that down on your bench and scare your opponent very early game. This deck can do a lot, and it's much easier to pull off than it looks. This is a long list of different Pokemon lines that seem like it would be very difficult to manage and get what you need into play, but because the EX era has so many amazing tools for searching out and drawing cards that you really don't have to worry about. You are still able to get what you need even with a list of 25 Pokemon with this much variation. Because this deck is so Pokemon focused, the trainer base is actually pretty straightforward. You got 4 copies of Copycat just for some straight draw power. Same thing for the 4 copies of Steven's Advice. This is just to get more cards in hand, which is how you're going to get all of these utility Pokemon going. Dunsparce is already going to be a huge help in getting those basic Pokemon out, but the way you're drawing into the rest of the deck is with these cards here. Oracle is going to make sure that you are guaranteed to draw into those cards utilizing Delcatty's energy draw. So you use Oracle to go grab 2 cards from your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order, then use Delcatty's energy draw to just draw the 2 cards you picked from your deck. It's smoothing out your draws at the maximum level. On top of that, I do have a couple copies of Professor Elm's training method just to help in getting those evolution cards, just because there are multiple components you need on the field in order to get the full synergy going, and Professor Elm is sometimes just needed to go grab that Manectric or Blaziken EX that's hidden somewhere in your deck. 4 copies of Rare Candy, that way you can evolve up into the Firestarter Blaziken and the Blaziken EX as fast as possible. We are running a 4-2-2-2 line of the Torchic line here, and so Rare Candy is going to be very important. This deck thrives on speed. Yeah, you can get into trouble against ATM Rock, but generally you're moving so fast that your opponent isn't going to have time to start stacking damage on a Blaziken to use ATM Rock and devolve it back down into a Torchic for a knockout, because you're just going to knock them out first. You got 1 copy of Town Volunteers to help recycle some of these key Pokemon, because there's only a 2-2 line of Delcatty and of Team Aqua's Manectric, so if you lose some of those pieces due to some gusting effects or just some early game shenanigans, Town Volunteers gives you a method to recycle those Pokemon and still get those onboard synergies going. Lastly, we have 1 copy of Pokemon Nurse down here. Any deck that's allowing you to move energy is going to allow you the opportunity to use Pokemon Nurse with no side effect, but sometimes you want the side effect, especially in a deck where you want fire energy in your discard pile. You can just fully heal a Pokemon that has a couple of fire energy on it, especially if it's a Blaziken EX. That way you're going all the way back up to 150 HP. Yeah, you might have to get rid of some fire energy off of it, but those fire energy are readily available to just recycle right back onto it if you have the Manectric and the Firestarter set up. Then over on the energy side, we do have a full playset of multi-energy. This is going to help you with your Blossoms whenever you do need to whip them out and smack around an opposing water type Pokemon. This can also be helpful if you're wanting to attack with a Team Aqua's Manectric or a Rayquaza EX. We do have a couple of lightning energy up here to assist with that, but that's not a whole lot of lightning energy, so multi-energy really helps cover your bases there, since there's no grass energy in this deck, and sometimes you might want to use the grass Pokemon we put in here. On top of that, we do finish off the deck with 10 fire energy. I mentioned this in the last Blaziken build. This doesn't seem like a ton for a deck that wants to discard a lot of fire energy, but because you have 2 Firestarter Blazikens in here, you're going to be able to get those back. So 10 fire energy has proven enough in playtesting that you're not going to run out of them. Not to spoil any upcoming videos, but I believe this deck to be the best deck of 2004. The results from the World's 2004 Championship does state otherwise, but in the top 20 of that tournament, there are 5 Blaziken placements, some with different techs, but with the same core as this deck. It can fall to Team Magma's Groudon if that Groudon can outspeed it. That deck definitely does have that potential, but I feel like Blaziken is much stronger if you're going first and you're able to turn 2 Rare Candy up into Blaziken and just get your complete setup using the utilities that this deck has to offer. The toughest matchup for this deck is probably Wailord EX, just because of the type weakness that Blaziken has, but it also forces Blaziken EX to use multiple Volcanic Ashes just to get a knockout. Sometimes it takes 3. The deck also runs ATM Rock and Expedition Vileplume on the bench, which can be very annoying for Blaziken to deal with. But please let me know down below what you think about this deck. What are your favorite decks in the 2004 format so far, and what decks are you most looking forward to? I appreciate you watching this far. If you want to help the channel even more, do all the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, tell a friend. Social media links down in the description. Join the Facebook group and get a good discussion going. I'll see you guys next video. Bye-bye.